began Bread and Sea about 18 years ago, and I really haven't had an awful lot to do, although I'll tell you about the remake of one of my films, but have not had a lot to do with film, talking about films. So I feel bad for you guys already. You're going to have to listen to me after not having said much about it for 18 years, and it took a lot for me to do it. And Valerie was delightful and is a terrific person. And I guess the first thing to ask if you all know what a B film is. Does everybody know what that and from whence that began? A B film, there used to be in theaters, people would go and they would see two films. One would be an A film that would be done by Warner Brothers, Fox, Columbia Pictures, the majors, as they were called, and then there was a B film that would be done by the lesser production companies and basically the independents lots of times. And my turf was the B films. That's what I worked in. When I got out of UCLA, I could have stayed out west and worked my way up the ladder of Fox and begun as a production assistant and worked my way up, and little by little, by the time I was 73, perhaps direct a film, because I had marginal writing skills. But what I decided instead was to go back to New York, from whence I came, and see if I could harass my cousins and my doctor and my accountant and my lawyer, and see if I could toss in a few bucks into a film, and then I could begin as a director. So I'll talk a little bit later about how I decided to make the horror film that I made, which is called Mother's Day, which I made in 1980. And made it for $115,000 at the time, and I'm still a little upset because I could have made it for $110. I know it. I could if I could have it to do it over again. It grossed, surprise, surprise, it grossed about 85 mil, which ask how much of that I got, but okay. And to that end, I went from a risky business of filmmaking to an even more risky business of the restaurant biz. The horror film that I made was remade 3 years ago for a $35 million budget. I was invited to do a walk-on, a little part, which I did. And I was invited to have lunch there, and I'm convinced that the lunch for the cast and crew cost more than the original production that I made. They had hot food and cold food, but so there was a Blu-ray of my film, of Mother's Day, which has kind of become a cult classic, if I do say so myself, and they chose this guy. There's some fairly significant producers in the horror genre that did Saw. Are you familiar with the film Saw? There were about 5 or 6 of them, and that guy and the director of Saw remade my film, and one of the majors decided to re-release my picture, and they asked me to do an introduction, and thought you might like to see that, because it kind of, one of the things I want to talk a little about is how I got from filmmaking into bread making. I really didn't like, and really don't like horror films per se, but I knew how much I could raise. I knew how much money I could raise, and so the choices were fairly clear. At that time, there really there'd been about 10 or 12 years where there had not been a horror film. This was, again, as I mentioned, in 1979. And I thought maybe it was time, plus I figured I could make a film like that either could make a porn film, which back then I still don't know that much about that. I know even less about porn than that. I could make a good film, which would be a brilliant little art film, and I stink, so I knew I couldn't do that. I knew I couldn't do quite, I couldn't be sure of it, that would be successful. But I knew for $115,000 you could kind of make a film on the cheap, and the look of the film on the cheap would help it, actually. So, and then also decided to mix some comedic elements in there as well, and I think that's what made it kind of interesting and unique and what got it on the map. So it still plays in theaters around the world. It was the night that it opened. I actually had not seen the film in front of an audience before. We used to, on a couple of the other films I worked on, we would have a free screening, and people would come and look at the film and kind of get a sense of what it was like. I showed it, I sat next to a guy on a plane who it turned out was the head of United Artists Theaters, and I sent him the rough cut of the film the next day. He bought the film from me. They owned, in New York, they owned about 49 theaters in the Manhattan area alone, and he committed himself to showing them in all of the theaters and to take a full-page ad in the Times. And this was all before, he was part of the old school of guys, the old school of the MGM big shots who would make a decision based on his gut. And so I was 28 at the time or so. And first night it opened in a Times Square theater, which was a huge place. And I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know, and the lights went down, and the place was packed. I was stunned. The place was packed. He'd done a terrific job of promoting, and I sat in the back in the balcony, and the lights went out, and the first few frames came on. 5 minutes passed, and the place just began to shake. It was just, the balcony just shook. People were screaming. This was the crowd for whom we designed the film too. So it was the Times Square crowd, and it was one of the most, I couldn't believe it, was one of the great nights of my life. And there was even a little kid that asked me for my autograph. So I asked him for his autograph because he was the first person that ever asked me for my autograph, and I have that on my wall. We made the film at a camp we rented a YMCA camp. I figured the best thing to do was to trap everybody, cast and crew, in there for 3 weeks, and just make the film there. And we made our own food, and I figured also if we had if we shot it outdoors, we wouldn't have to light it. We could kind of move very fast and shoot. I put the posters of my films in the bathroom. 3 weeks into Bread and Sea, this is the poster basically. I'm served with a lawyer's letter threatening a $2.5 million lawsuit. Apparently, a mother and her child walked into the bathroom, and the basis of the suit was that she was so traumatized by the posters that were on the wall in the bathroom that she was going to take me to court and for $2.5 million. That there was a little kid, and she never expected to see such a thing, and when she went to do something as wholesome as buying baked goods. So fortunately it was dismissed, but and then the next week I had, this is the posters were like, I have them in plastic like this, and apparently there was an old lady in the bathroom who, while she was in there, one of these fell on her. So I figured, okay, this is not a great idea. I think I better take down the posters, I'm being told. And that's the final art. But again, it's the little guy against the big guy, and which eventually ended up with one of the reasons why I left the biz. The story behind it is that we built a town, we blew it up, we had car chases. The producer kept shouting, "It's more action, he kept saying. So all right, we'll blow up a thing, we'll do it. And it actually is a fairly good good film. Unfortunately, the distribution company bought it from us. And actually, I never lost. Every film of mine has made a buck. I have not lost on one film. I'm proud to say. And I'm proud to say, as a result of the advance they gave us, they went broke. So it wasn't because of the film. They never released it. So that's why I've got I have it on tape. Here's one of the things. Very, very fast. I left New York after the film that I'd done before that. I was assured by the producer, who was an Indonesian, that it's a piece of cake to make a film there. So I left New York. I left. He said it would be a month and a half, and then I'd be back. 2.5 years later, I returned, and I'd actually left dishes in my sink in Manhattan. So you can imagine. Here's one of the reasons why it took so long. Just a fast story. A lot of stunts. First of all, the main thing is, this is a nation, and he neglected to mention this to me, where the camera had never moved. They would put the camera on the stilts, and that is where it would stay. So they never had a traveling shot. Into that place, I then had to have car chases, explosions. You saw the town being blown up. We had we had a whole scaffolding fight. We had he said, and I asked him, because I wasn't sure the story there, so I asked him if there was tracks. He said, yes, we've got everything. Shots said, don't worry. So I get there, and we go downstairs to where all his film equipment is, and he did have tracks, because they're these metal things onto which the camera dolly rolls, but there had been a flood, and they were stacked one upon another, and it was like this rusted one-piece statue of metal that was there. So into that, we then had to make this happen. My crew was almost entirely, he allowed me to bring 4 folks from the States, so I immediately had to learn to speak in Indonesian. Let me explain to you how stunts were done there. In the States, what you do, let's say you had a motorbike. The scene is, you've got a taxi, you've got a taxi pulls up, the bike, the motorbike then hits the side of the taxi, the guy on the bike rolls over the taxi and he's dead, okay? So you would do that, you'd begin a shot of the bike, you'd then do a close-up perhaps of the side of the taxi as the wheel hits the side of the taxi. You'd then kind of get a shot of a guy flying through the air. He'd land on mats, blah, blah, blah. So it would be done in a bunch of shots. We get there, I keep trying to speak to the stunt guy about, well, how's this shot going to be done? Because that was the shot. We line up, and it's actually 5 guys who are going to hit 5 different cabs. We set the camera up. I'm saying, well, where do we cut? He said, just roll it and we'll stop it when we're done. So I'm sitting there, I'm watching these 5 guys go at 85 miles an hour, and they all actually hit the taxi at 85 miles an hour and go flying over the top, and they're like, they're like totally unconscious and on the ground. And I'm thinking, wait, that's not a stunt. Wait a second, that is, I know a stunt when I see one, and that was not it. He said you didn't like it, and they had 4 guys pull them away, and they had another 5 guys on the next group of motorcycles. So there's like a wave theory of stunts over there, right? So I then had to explain and work with them and show them how, I really don't want to kill anybody in this film. And fortunately we didn't.